The Galactic Council had kept peace among the stars for 3,000 years. Hundreds of species lived together, traded together, and built great civilizations across millions of planets. They believed the universe was safe. They believed the age of monsters was over. They were wrong. The Viren came from the dark spaces between galaxies. No one knew where they started or how old they were. They stood 12 feet tall, on 4 powerful legs. Their bodies were covered in black shells harder than steel. They had 6 arms, and each arm ended in a blade that could cut through metal like paper. Their faces had no eyes that anyone could see. It's just a smooth black surface with a mouthful of teeth. But the worst thing about the Viren was not their size or their blades. The worst thing was what they ate. The Viren fed on fear. They could smell terror from miles away. They could taste panic in the air. When a creature felt afraid, the Viren grew stronger. Fear was their food, their drink, and their greatest pleasure. For 20 years, the Viren swept across the galaxy like a dark wave. They attacked world after world. They did not want resources or land. They wanted to hunt. They wanted to feel the fear of their prey. 17 civilizations fell to them. Billions of beings died screaming, and the Viren feasted on every scream. The Galactic Council sent their greatest fleets to stop the Viren. The battles lasted hours. The Council lost every single one. Ships were torn apart. Soldiers ran in terror. The Viren did not just defeat their enemies. They broke them completely. Ambassador Nari was one of the oldest members of the Council. She had seen many wars and many tragedies, but nothing prepared her for the Viren. She stopped sleeping. She stopped hoping. She simply waited for the end. Then the reports came in about a small planet called Kepler-2 to be. It was a human colony, far from Earth and far from help. Only 6,000 humans lived there, mostly farmers and miners. The Viren had found them. Nari prepared the memorial files. She had done this many times now. She would record the name of the species, their history, and their final moments. Humans were young and weak. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They would be gone by morning. But morning came, and the humans were still alive. Nari read the reports 3 times because she could not believe them. The Viren had landed their warriors on the planet. They had marched toward the human settlement, ready to hunt. And the humans had not run. They had fought back. Captain Tay was a soldier who had never seen real combat before. He was 35 years old, with a wife and 2 children in the colony. When the Viren ships appeared in the sky, everyone expected him to order an evacuation. Instead, he gathered every person who could hold a weapon. "We cannot outrun them," he told the colonists. "Their ships are faster than ours. If we run, they will catch us in space where we have no cover and no chance. But here, on our ground, in our home, we can make them pay for every step they take." The colonists listened. They were afraid. Of course they were afraid. The Viren were nightmares made real, but something else burned inside them too. Something hot and stubborn and angry. This was their home. These were their families. And they would not give them up without a fight. Farmers picked up rifles. Miners grabbed explosives. Teachers and doctors and engineers built walls and dug trenches. Even children helped carry supplies and messages. In 6 hours, the small colony became a fortress. The Viren attacked at sunset. They expected the humans to scatter like all the others. They expected to smell fear so thick it would fill their mouths like honey. Instead, they found lines of humans waiting in silence. No panic. No screaming. Just cold determination and loaded weapons. The first wave of Viren warriors fell to gunfire. The second wave reached the walls and found them lined with explosives. The third wave broke through, only to face humans who fought with knives when their guns were empty, and with their bare hands when their knives broke. The Viren commander sent a message back to his fleet. His words were strange and confused. They do not run. They do not fear. What are these creatures? On the human side, Captain Tay was bleeding from a wound on his head. His rifle was cracked. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders, but he was smiling. "They thought we would be easy prey," he said to his soldiers. They thought wrong. The battle lasted through the night. By dawn, the Viren had pulled back to rethink their strategy. They had lost more warriors in one night than they usually lost in an entire conquest. Ambassador Nari received updates every hour. She shared them with the council, and for the first time in years, the Great Hall was silent, with something other than despair. It was silent with wonder. "This is impossible," said one council member. "The Viren have never been stopped." "Not by anyone, perhaps," Nari said slowly. "We have never met a species like humans before." She looked at the reports again. 6,000 humans against a Viren invasion force. They should all be dead. Instead, they were preparing for another day of fighting. They were treating their wounded, repairing their walls, sharpening their weapons. In all her years, Nari had seen many species face the Viren. She had seen them surrender. She had seen them flee. She had seen them freeze in terror and wait for death. But she had never seen a species look at the Viren and decide that fear was not enough reason to stop fighting. Humans, she realized, were something new. Something the galaxy had never encountered before. Something that might just change everything on Kepler 2 to be. Captain Tay stood on the damaged walls of his colony and watched the Viren camp in the distance. His people were tired and hurt and scared, but they were still standing. "Come and try again," he whispered to the darkness. "We will be waiting." And they were. The Viren warlord Krath had conquered 47 worlds. He had killed millions of creatures with his own blades. He had tasted the fear of 100 different species, and none of them had ever stopped him. When he heard that his warriors were struggling against a tiny human colony, he laughed. Then he stopped laughing and went to see for himself. Krath was larger than most Viren, standing almost 14 feet tall. His black shell was covered with scars from battles he had won. His 6 blade arms were stained dark from all the blood they had spilled. When he walked, the ground shook. When he spoke, even other Viren listened carefully. He landed on Kepler 2 to be on the 3rd day of the invasion. He expected to find his warriors finishing off the last humans. Instead, he found something that confused him deeply. His warriors were afraid, not of dying. Viren did not fear death. They were afraid of something else. Something they could not name or understand. Krath demanded an explanation, and his commanders told him about the tunnels. The humans had dug tunnels beneath their colony. Deep, dark tunnels that twisted and turned in all directions. The Viren had sent hunting parties into these tunnels to find and kill the humans hiding there. None of the hunting parties came back. Lieutenant Hannah led the human fighters in the tunnels. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with short black hair and calm eyes. Before the invasion, she had been a mining supervisor. She knew every rock and shadow beneath the colony. Now she used that knowledge to hunt monsters. The Viren could track prey by their body heat. So Hannah and her squad covered themselves in cold mud and waited in the darkness without moving. They waited for 6 hours. They did not speak. They did not shift. They barely breathed. When the Viren hunting party finally walked past them, the humans attacked from behind. The battle in the tunnels was fast and brutal. The Viren were stronger, but the tunnels were narrow. Their size became a weakness. Their long blade arms hit the walls and ceiling. The humans used this. They set traps in tight spaces. They collapsed tunnels on top of their enemies. They fought with knives and picks and bare hands in the darkness. 1. Viren warrior was found by his comrades hanging from the tunnel ceiling. He was still alive, wrapped in cables and chains. Around him, human writing covered the walls. The words said, "Your friends are next." Krath read the reports and felt something move in his chest. It was cold and uncomfortable. He did not recognize it at first because he had never felt it before. It was the beginning of fear. Dr. Sue was the colony's scientist who studied alien life. She had spent years learning about different species across the galaxy. Now she studied the Viren. She watched them from hidden cameras. She examined the bodies of dead ones. And she made an important discovery. The Viren feed on fear, she told Captain Tay and the other leaders. but they have never met a species that can control their fear. Most creatures cannot help being afraid. It is automatic. But humans are different. We can be terrified and still choose to fight. We can look at death and spit in its face. This confuses them. It starves them. Captain Tay nodded slowly. So every time we stand our ground, every time we refuse to run, we hurt them. Yes, Dr. Seuss said. Courage is our weapon.
How?
Private Wu was 19 years old. He had joined the colony's defense force just 3 months before the invasion. He had never fired a weapon at a living target before the Viaran came. Now he had killed 7 of them. On the 5th day of fighting, Wu's squad was surrounded. Their ammunition was almost gone. A massive Vian warrior was charging toward them, its blade arms raised to kill. Wu's rifle was broken. He had no grenades. He had nothing except the explosive charge on his belt, meant for mining, not combat. He thought about running. His body screamed at him to run. But then he thought about his mother back at the colony center. He thought about his little sister. He thought about what the Viaran would do to them if the defense line fell. The fear did not go away. It stayed with him, cold and heavy in his stomach. But something else was there too. Something stronger. Private Wu smiled at the charging monster. He spat at it. Then he pressed the button. The explosion killed him and the Viaran warrior both. It also collapsed the tunnel entrance, blocking the Viaran advance for 3 more hours. 3 hours that let the colonists strengthen their defenses. 3 hours that saved hundreds of lives. Krath heard about the young human who had chosen death over retreat. He heard about the smile on the human's face. And for the first time in his long life of killing, Krath felt afraid. The Viaran had conquered the galaxy by being the scariest things in it. Every species they met was terrified of them. That terror fed them, made them strong, made them unstoppable. But humans were different. Humans felt fear, but they did not obey it. Some humans even seemed to enjoy the fight. They made jokes in battle. They sang songs while they built defenses. They laughed at death like it was an old friend. Lieutenant Hannah caught a Viaran warrior alive and brought it to the surface. The creature thrashed and screamed, trying to escape. Hannah looked at it calmly. "Tell your warlord something for me," she said. "Tell him that we are not his prey. We are the hunters now, and we are just getting started." She'll let the warrior go. It ran back to its camp so fast it nearly fell over its own legs. That night, the Viaran did not attack. They stayed in their camp, watching the human colony, their eyeless faces, waiting, thinking, and feeling something that spread through their ranks like a disease. Doubt on the walls. The humans watched back. They were tired and hurt and hungry, but they were still standing, and they planned to keep standing until the very end, whatever that end might be. The battle for Kepler 22b entered its 3rd week. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. No species had ever lasted more than 3 days against a Viaran invasion. The humans had lasted 21 and showed no signs of stopping. The Galactic Council watched in silence. Ambassador Nari stopped writing memorial files. Instead, she wrote reports, updates, analysis, for the first time in years. She felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope on the colony. Captain Tay was wounded badly on day 16. A Viaran blade had cut through his armor and opened his side. The doctor saved his life, but he could no longer fight. Command passed to Commander Mina. Mina was 40 years old with gray in her black hair and lines on her face from years of hard work. She had been an engineer before the war, designing buildings and bridges. Now she designed traps and defenses. And she had ideas that made even the Viaran hesitate. "Cannot beat them in straight combat," she told her officers. "They are bigger, stronger, and have better weapons. But we can beat them here." She tapped her head. "We will break their minds before we break their bodies." Mina started what humans called psychological warfare. It was not just about killing the enemy. It was about making them afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to think. First, the humans collected Viaran equipment from dead warriors. They broke it into pieces and left the pieces on patrol routes where Viaran scouts would find them. Each piece had a message attached. This belonged to your friend. He screamed before he died. Second, Mina organized the children of the colony. Not to fight, to draw. The children made pictures of dead Viaran. Simple drawings in bright colors, showing the monsters being killed in many different ways. These pictures were left everywhere the Viara might find them. The message was clear. Even our children are not afraid of you. Third, and most terrible of all, the humans recorded the sounds of dying Viaran, the screams and cries of warriors killed in battle. At night, they played these recordings on speakers pointed at the Viaran camp. All night long, every night Krath demanded that his warriors destroy the speakers. They tried. But the humans had hidden them well, and every time a Viaran went searching for the sound, they walked into an ambush. Sergeant Jin was 60 years old with bad knees and worse hearing. He could not run or fight like the young soldiers, so he found another way to serve. He organized all the elderly and wounded colonists into a production team. They could not swing weapons, but they could make them. Jin's team worked day and night. They melted down metal from damaged buildings. They mixed chemicals from the farming supplies. They built guns, bombs, traps from anything they could find. Grandmother Soon was 73 years old and had been a chemistry teacher before retiring to the colony. She spent 4 days in a laboratory, mixing and testing different compounds. On the 5th day, she emerged with a smile on her tired face. "I found something," she said. She held up a small bottle of green liquid. "This will eat through Viran shells in seconds. We can put it in our bullets, our traps, anywhere we want." The first time the green acid was used, a Viaran warrior watched its own arm dissolve. It screamed so loudly that its comrades across the battlefield stopped fighting to stare. The humans used that moment of shock to push forward and take back ground they had lost. Krath finally cornered a human squad on day 19. 50 of his best warriors surrounded 12 humans in a destroyed building. There was no escape, no reinforcements coming. The humans were out of ammunition and badly wounded. Krath stepped forward and spoke in the human language he had learned. "Surrender. You cannot win. Drop your weapons, and I will make your deaths quick." Squad leader Day was a woman of 30 with blood running down her face and a broken arm hanging at her side. She looked at the massive warlord and laughed. "Surrender?" she said. "You are the ones who should surrender. Look at you. The greatest killers in the galaxy, and you cannot defeat farmers and miners. What will the other species think when they hear about this?" Krath felt anger rise in his chest. "You are surrounded. You are dying. What do you have to laugh about?" Day smiled. Her teeth were red with blood. "We are not trapped in here with you. You are trapped in here with us." The squad fought for 18 hours. They used knives when their guns were empty. They used their fists when their knives broke. They bit and scratched and kicked. One by one they fell. But each one took Viaran warriors with them. When dawn came, only Day was still alive. She was missing an eye and could barely walk. But she was walking. Slowly, painfully, she dragged herself back to the colony. Tied to her belt were 3 Viaran skulls. The colonists watched her come through the gates. No one spoke. No one cheered. They simply stood in silence and watched this broken woman carry her trophies home. Mina met her at the medical center. "How?" she asked. "How are you still alive?" Day looked at her commander with her one remaining eye. "I promised my daughter I would come home. I keep my promises." She collapsed then, and the doctors rushed to save her. They worked for 10 hours, and somehow, against all odds, Day survived. Across the camp, the Viaran watched and waited. Krath had lost a third of his invasion force. His warriors no longer wanted to patrol at night. Some of them had started having bad dreams, which Viaran were not supposed to have. Something was changing. Something fundamental. The hunters were learning what it felt like to be hunted, and they did not like it at all. Ambassador Nari arrived at Kepler 2 to be with a Council observation fleet on the 28th day. She had expected to document the end of humanity. She had prepared her cameras and recording devices to capture their final moments. What she found instead made her stop breathing. The Viaran were retreating, their camp up. Their ships were preparing to leave. Warriors who had conquered 47 worlds were walking backward, away from a colony of farmers and miners. Nari watched through her ship's windows and could not believe what she was seeing. Krath had lost 2/3 of his invasion force, not to superior technology, not to overwhelming numbers, but to something he could not fight or understand. The humans simply would not stop. Wounded humans returned to combat with bandages still fresh. Dying humans used their last breaths to pull triggers. Civilians turned every building into a fortress and every street into a trap. Krath had never seen anything like it. No one in the galaxy had ever seen anything like it. Engineer Yoon had not slept in 3 weeks. His eyes were red and his hands shook, but he kept working. He had learned how to take apart Viaran weapons and rebuild them for human use. He had built defense turrets that could fire automatically. He had created drones from broken machines that flew over enemy positions and dropped explosives. "You need to rest," his wife told him. "You will kill yourself." Yoon shook his head. "I will rest when they are gone, not before." Medic Yoon had performed over 200 surgeries since the invasion began. She had removed bullets, sealed wounds, and reattached limbs with tools meant for farming, not medicine. Her patients called her the angel. She called herself tired. "How do you keep going?" A young soldier asked her after she saved his leg and wiped blood from her hands and smiled sadly. "Because if I stop, people die. So I do not stop. It is simple." Teacher Bora had spent her life teaching children to read and write. Now, she taught teenagers to fight. More than that, she led them. On night 22, she took a group of 15 young people on a raid against a Viaran fuel depot. They crawled through mud for 2 hours to reach it. They set their charges in perfect silence. Then they ran as the explosion lit up the night sky. 3 Viaran ships could not take off the next day because they had no fuel. Bora's teenagers had done what trained soldiers could not. Krath was desperate. He needed a victory. He needed to show his warriors that humans could be beaten. So he did something that had worked on every other world. He challenged the human leader to single combat. If I win, he broadcast to the colony, "Your people surrender, and I will be merciful. If you win, we leave this world forever." Everyone expected Commander Mina to refuse. Krath was 14 feet of armored death. Mina was a human woman of average size, with no special combat training. The fight would be over in seconds. Mina accepted. "Are you insane?" Captain Tay demanded from his hospital bed. "He will kill you." Mina looked at him calmly. "Maybe, but our people need to see that we are not afraid. That our leaders will stand in front of them, not behind them. Win or lose, this fight will show them what humanity means." The duel took place in an open field between the two camps. Both sides watched. Viaran warriors stood in silent rows, their eyeless faces turned toward the battle. Human colonists crowded onto walls and rooftops holding their breath. Krath towered over Mina like a nightmare made real. His 6-blade arms gleamed in the sunlight. His black shell was polished and perfect. He had killed thousands of creatures in single combat. He had never lost. Mina held a simple sword and a small shield. She was wearing basic armor that would not stop a Viaran blade. She looked up at the monster and did not blink. Karat struck first. His blade arm moved faster than the eye could follow. It hit Mina's left arm and shattered the bone. She stumbled but did not fall. His second strike cracked 3 of her ribs. She coughed blood but stayed on her feet. "Why do you not scream?" Krath demanded. "Why do you not beg?" Mina straightened her broken body and looked at him. "Is that all you have?" The fight lasted 40 minutes. Krath was faster, stronger, and had more weapons. He should have won in seconds. But every time he knocked Mina down, she got back up. Every time he wounded her, she came back for more. She lost her left eye to his blade. She kept fighting. Her leg was torn open to the bone. She kept fighting. Her armor was destroyed, her shield was shattered, and blood covered every inch of her body. She kept fighting. The VRN warriors watching began to back away. They had seen many battles. They had seen many enemies. But they had never seen anything refuse to die like this. It was wrong. It was impossible. It was terrifying. Krath struck again and again, but Mina moved just enough to survive. She was learning his patterns, finding his weaknesses, waiting for her chance. It came on the 41st minute. Krath raised all 6 arms for a killing blow. For one heartbeat, his chest was exposed. Mina threw herself forward with the last of her strength. Her sword found the gap in his shell. The blade sank deep into his throat. Krath fell. The greatest VRN warrior in a generation died in the dirt of a small human colony. Killed by a woman who should have been dead an hour ago, Mina collapsed beside his body. Dr. Hayen ran to her, screaming for stretchers and blood. "How are you still alive?" he asked as he worked to stop the bleeding. Mina smiled through blood-stained teeth. Too angry to die? And the galaxy held its breath. The VRN Empire received the news of Krath's death with disbelief, then with anger. They assembled their grand fleet, 100 warships carrying 1,000,000 warriors, and sent them to Kepler-2 to be. Their orders were simple. Destroy everything. Leave no human alive. Burn the colony until nothing remained but ash and memory. It was the largest VRN fleet ever assembled. It was meant to glass entire worlds from orbit. It was absolutely overkill for a single, small colony. It was not enough. Earth had received the distress signal from Kepler-2 to be on day 3 of the invasion. It took time to gather ships, to load supplies, to prepare for a journey across the galaxy. But Earth had not been idle. Admiral J of the United Nations Space Command led the response fleet. 200 warships, the largest human fleet ever, launched, but it was not the ships that made the VRN High Commander pause when his sensors showed the approaching force. It was what came with them. Behind the military ships came thousands of other vessels, cargo ships, transport freighters, personal yachts, converted mining vessels, old exploration craft. Every ship that could fly had been pressed into service, and each one was filled with volunteers. Millions of humans had demanded to join the fight. People from every nation, every background, every walk of life. Scientists and farmers, teachers and artists, young and old. They had no military training. Many had never held weapons before. But they had heard about Kepler-2 to be. They had heard about their fellow humans, fighting alone against the monsters of the galaxy, and they had come to help. The VRN High Commander tried to understand. His species conquered worlds by spreading fear. They broke the spirit of their enemies before breaking their bodies. Every species they had ever fought wanted to protect themselves first, their families second, and strangers not at all. He broadcast a message to the human fleet. Why? The humans on Kepler-2 to be are not your tribe. They are not your blood. They are strangers on a world most of you have never seen. Why do you fight for them? Why do you risk death for people you do not know? Admiral J's response was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species, every world, every being with a communication device heard his words, because they are human, because they are ours, and because no one hurts our family and walks away. The battle lasted 6 hours. The VRN Grand Fleet had conquered entire civilizations. They had destroyed armadas and shattered empires. They were the greatest military force in the known galaxy. They were not prepared for humans. Human ships flew in patterns that made no tactical sense, sacrificing themselves to create openings for others. Human pilots rammed their vessels into VRN warships when their weapons failed. Human soldiers boarded enemy craft and fought hand-to-hand in corridors. Too small for VRN to use their blade arms effectively. And through it all, the humans were talking, joking, singing. They faced death with smiles on their faces and songs on their lips. The VRN could not understand it. They could not fight it. They could not stop it. When the battle ended, the VRN Grand Fleet was debris. Twisted metal and broken shells floating in the cold darkness of space. The survivors fled back toward their empire. carrying a message that would change the galaxy forever. Earth was not to be touched. Humans were not prey. The Galactic Council formally welcomed humanity into their ranks 3 days later. It was the fastest acceptance in Council history. No one objected. No one could object. Humanity had done what no other species had ever done. They had faced the Viren, and one, Ambassador Nari, visited Commander Mina in the hospital. Mina was covered in bandages, missing an eye, and would need months of treatment to heal properly. But she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. "I have studied many species," Nari said. "I have seen many wars, but I have never understood what drives your kind. You are not the strongest. You are not the fastest. Your technology is young. Your numbers are small, but you fight like nothing I have ever seen. Why? What makes you this way?" Mina thought about the question for a long time. She thought about Private Wu, who had smiled before he died. She thought about Grandmother Soon and her acid that dissolved monsters. She thought about Squad Leader Day crawling home with skulls on her belt. "Every species has a survival instinct," she said finally. "Fear keeps you alive. It tells you to run, to hide, to give up when the fight is lost. But humans have something else. We have love." Nari tilted her head. "Love? Love for our families? Our friends? Our homes? The people we have never met, but know are part of our kind." Mina looked out the window at the stars. "When you threaten what we love, fear does not make us run. It makes us dangerous." The Viren Empire collapsed within 6 months. Without the ability to spread fear and feed on terror, their society crumbled. Warriors who had conquered worlds now wandered without purpose. Refugees scattered across the galaxy, homeless and lost, and to everyone's amazement, it was humans who offered them sanctuary. "They are monsters," the Council protested. "They killed billions." Ambassador Yuna, humanity's new representative, shook her head. "They were monsters. Now they are just scared. And humans understand fear better than anyone. We just choose to fight it instead of becoming it." On Kepler 2b, a memorial was built where the invasion had begun. It was a simple wall of black stone with names carved into it. 847 names. Every human who had died defending the colony, beneath the names. Single phrase was written in gold letters: "We held the line." Species from across the galaxy came to see it. They studied humanity's history, a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars against themselves. A species that had clawed its way to the stars through stubborn refusal to accept extinction, the galaxy's most terrifying species had found their match. Not because humans were stronger or faster or smarter, but because humans simply did not know how to quit, and in a universe full of things that wanted to make them afraid, that was the most dangerous thing of all.